All. In today's session, you are going all to learn about the basic concepts of macroeconomics and its issues, and of course, variables. So these are the key macroeconomic variables where I taught three main variables in the earlier session. From today onwards, I'm going to begin from the fourth key economic variable, that is inflation, and so on. So let's begin from the inflation. So what is exactly the inflation is? Inflation is a overall rise in the general price level of the goods and services which are being produced in an economy over a period of time. So if we talk about price, if the general price level goes up, then that each unit of the currencies, of course, they will buy a less amount of goods and services or less units of goods and services. So immediately, inflation creates a loss of a value of money, and that's the main reason that inflation is one of the cause or one of the variable where put an economy in such a situation which turn into a losses in terms of supply and demand of goods and services. So inflation is also caused when the goods and services are in high demand. Automatically, the demand for such goods will keep in drop in availability. So consumers who are willing to pay more and more for those items they actually needed and wanted, the manufacturers and the service providers are get a chance to charge more for such goods and services, and as a result their aggregate demand will become decrease. So automatically you can see one of the major example of inflation, that is called the natural disaster, will automatically you can see decreased a food crop or make a housing, you can see in a or an apartment boom can exhaust the building supplies and other any other situations, and that's the overview of the inflation, which is one of the main key macroeconomic variable. The next one is international trade. So when we talk about international trade, it's not deals with domestically, it deals also internationally. So it's just a process of exchange of goods and services between the country, and such type of trade will also increase the you can say the demand and the supply to a world economy, and ultimately if any global event or any global situation could arise, so automatically the aggregate demand and aggregate supply of goods and services will automatically affect it. So, international trade will also allow how to expand the markets for both goods and services. And of course, it is also the one of the reason when the international trade will come across the global boundaries, and that could be between any of the countries, like between the Japanese, German, or American, related to any product, for example, car. When we talk about the innovations of the technology, or you can see the outsourcing services of Genpact and any other services that comes under the international trade. So international under the international trade, the market contains you can see an increased competition or a greater competition, and of course they also have competitive prices, which definitely brings a cheaper product in a home country for the consumers, and that was the ultimate advantage of an international trade. The next concept is the balance of payment. So balance of payment of automatically it also refers to a record of all the economic transactions between the residents of the country and the rest of the world over a period of time. It would be the quarter, it would be the year, it would be 2 or more years as well. When we talk about the transactions are made by any one of them, whether it would be the individuals or firms or the government bodies, and accordingly, it includes the various you can see types of transactions, either external, visible, or non-visible. Like for example, we talk about the tea, we talk about the livestock, so we talk about the any consumers goods, which automatically where the all the economic transactions related to sales and purchase between the different countries, it all recorded. And when we record all those economic transactions between own country to international countries, that means it refers to a concept that is called the balance of payment in a particular year. It would be a year, it would be quarterly, it would be half yearly, and so on. It also represents the summation of the country current demand and supply of the claim of foreign currencies. So automatically we are not talking about own domestic country, we are also talking about the international transactions. If the host country would do a trade of any of the consumer products, say a tea, so automatically the demand and the supply, of course, deals in the foreign currencies, and of course, the foreign claims on its currencies, and that's called the overview of the balance of payments. The next concept is monetary policy. So when we talk about the monetary policy, it's a control of the currencies by a central bank of India. So monetary policy is the process by which the monetary authority, who are actually a controller, who are actually a facilitator of this of the currencies, who also control the supply of money, and that exactly called the monetary policy. One of the main purpose of the monetary policy is to maintain the price stability of the goods and services, and automatically create a general trust in the currencies among the public. So definitely it's not limited to such objectives or the goals of the monetary policy. There are other goals of the monetary policy which also refers to a contribute to economic growth, a stability in the economy. It also reduces the unemployment, and of course predict the exchange rates with the other currencies as well by the different commercial, public, and private banks. And of course, it always target an inflation rate, of course, and the interest rate, so that it would create a trust in the currencies among the public, so that they can offer the you can see the international trade, you can see the services where the exchange of the currency would take place at a particular you can see accurate interest rate, which is also the beneficial for the banks and as well as for the customers of the banks, and of course public. The next one is fiscal policy. When we talk about the fiscal policy refers to all the you can say spending levels and tax rates to monitor and of course influence the national economy. In other words, I could say the fiscal policy refers the government spending level, the tax rates for the monitoring purpose, which ultimately influence a national economy. So that's called the fiscal policy. And ultimately, the government has a major role to adjust its own spending level and of course the taxation rates, so that the monitoring process and the influential factor on the nation economy would also you can say simultaneously work on. So, and of course, when we talk about the fiscal policy, it is one of the sister strategy to the monetary policy, and the monetary policy works with the you can say the as the monetary policy is also to maintain or to adjust the supply of money, and ultimately the fiscal policy will also it guides it, or to the central banks, which also influence the national money supply. And of course, these two policy, when the particular economist and the policy makers who all when they combine these two policy, monetary and fiscal, and automatically just because to direct or to achieve the country economic goals, and that is what the ultimate goal of the fiscal policy. So the one of the most important or significant goal is to direct a country economic goals, that how the country could achieve their economic goals, and it could be achieved through the fiscal and the monetary policy as well, because after all the fiscal policy is a strategy to the monetary policy, and how the monetary policy works on, which is based on the strategies which was made or which will be made by the Central Bank of India. The next concept is interest rate. So when we talk about interest rate, it refers to a rate where the borrowers actually pay the interest rate, whatever the money they have been used for. And of course, the interest rate is to be paid to the creditors to whom they have borrowed that money, which is called a creditors or the lenders. So interest rate is actually a percentage of the principal which is being paid on a certain number of periods. It would be a number of years, it would be number of months, it would be a couple of years, where a particular total loan amount has to be paid off. Many different interest rate depends upon country to country, depends upon bank to bank, and of course then how they can carry off, and depends upon the number of duration and the risk involved in that particular loan amount. So this is all about an overview of interest rate. The next concept is stock market. So when we talk about the stock market, it also called the equity market. It also called the you can say it also called the stocks, which also in other words we could say shares as well. So when we talk about the stock market or equity market, it refers to an aggregation, or you can say a combination of buyers and sellers who involved in buying and selling of stock called shares. And of course it also include all the securities or all the products of the exchanges or stock exchanges, which are to be traded publicly and privately. And of course, when we talk about the history of the stock market, which also revealed that the prices of such stock, whether it would be equity share or it would be the preference shares, and of course the other as important assets, will always be a part of the economic activity which is involved in such market. And of course, this particular market is also influence or an indicator of the social mood of the customer. So if we talk about the buying and selling, it depends upon the social mood of the customers, that whether they would buy a particular share in such market or not, publicly or privately. So it depends upon the customers that how much they will actually willing to invest into a shares under a stock exchange. So when we talk about the stock exchange, we always have a name in our mind, that it's a Bombay Stock Exchange or a National Stock Exchange, London, you can say Stock Exchange. So this is all about the names of such exchanges where the customers invest on shares or buy shares and sell immediately when they get a particular revenue on selling of a share or not. So when we talk about the economy, where the stock market, when it keeps on rising level, it also considered It also considered a up and coming economy. So that means just the origin, when we talk about the histories and the origin of the stock market, it also build up our economy equally. So where the investment, a particular plenty of the customers invest on the products of the stock exchanges, and automatically that's the main reason it's called the up and coming economy. And stock market is also being considered the primary indicator of the economic development and the strength. It means it also improves the country economic performance and of course its development, and that's called stock market. The next concept is business cycle. So when we talk about the business cycle, the various names will be called on. The first one is it also called the economic cycle. It also called the boom bust cycle. It refers to a fluctuations, the variations in the production in the particular trade, whether domestic or international, whether it would be activity called in economic activities which always deals with the exchange of money over a period of time. It would be months or year in a particular market economy, and that's called business cycles. So whatever the variations involved in the aggregate production, aggregate trade, economic activities over a period of time, so that variation, that fluctuations is called business cycle. And one of the major tool and where how the fluctuation is to be shown on, that could be through trend analysis. It's one of the tool of the statistical analysis. So when we talk about the business cycle, it categorized into two parts. The first one is downward and upward movement, and the second would be the expansion and contraction of such cycle. So when we talk about the business cycle is called to be a downward and upward, it depends upon the level of the gross domestic product. So if we talk about the negativity of negative GDP, so it automatically downwards movements. When we talk about the positive domestic product, it can be called about the upward movements. So when we talk about the periods of fluctuations of the expansion and the contraction, it totally depends upon the level of economic activities, and that ultimately called the business fluctuation depending upon the situations like inflation, deflation, hyperinflation, recession. So when we talk about the expansion and contraction, which automatically depends upon the level of economic activities, in other words, called the business fluctuation, that it also refers to a long-term growth trend. So when any particular cycle is to be shown over a years, that ultimately and which refers to an expansion and contraction, that means it would increase or decrease simultaneously or according to the long period of time. That's ultimately called the expansion and contraction business cycle. So it is all, in other words, when we talk about for a long period of the business fluctuations, depending upon the situation, so there is a tool that we denote in a statistical analysis, and that's called the long-term growth trend analysis. So these fluctuations occurs around a long-term growth trend, and it's typically shifts between the periods of time or over a point of time as well, which ultimately refers to a economic growth rapidly, or it would be called an expansion or boom, or it would be called you can say relative stagnant situation or a recession situation. In other words, we also call a contraction or recession. So, and that's exactly refers and called a business cycle, an overview of the business cycle, which we called about the that how the business cycle shifts, That is the downward and upward movement. It is the expansion and contraction, which is very similar to a concepts of the theory of demand. So that is all that actually depends upon the situations, that how the cycle would run off over a period of time when the business fluctuations occurs in a period of, yeah, in a particular situations like expansion, boom, contraction, inflation, or recession. So that is called business cycle. The next concept and the last macroeconomic variable is the exchange rate. So when we talk about the exchange rate, we are ultimately talk about the currencies. Exchange of two currency. It means it refers to a rate where the one currency will be exchanged for the another. For example, if the American dollar currency will be per dollar currency would be and the rate of that American dollars would be 87.56, and ultimately when we talk about the Indian rupee, that is rupees 1, that means the 1 rupee is equal to 87.56 dollar. That means, and that actually called an exchange rate where the 1 rupee is equal to 87. That means 1 rupee, that means the currency of Indian currency will get exchanged into an American, and the American currency will get exchanged into an Indian currency, and the rate of per currency, that is for the Indian currency or in rupees, that is 1 rupee, and the American currency will be in dollars, that is 87.56. So the rate, that 87.56 and rupees 1 is actually by the different central banks of different countries, where the one currency will be exchanged for another, and automatically it always refers the value of one country currency in terms of another currency. And when we talk about it, how this exchange rate will be decided depends upon the two categories: the nominal exchange rate and the real exchange rate. So when we talk about the nominal exchange rate, it refers to a rate where the monies of different currencies can be exchanged for one another. That is called the nominal exchange rate, because automatically when we talk about the exchange rate, we always refers to a very specific term that's called international trade, and automatically when we talk about the international trade, then of course the global investment will always takes place under this particular concept that is called exchange rate. A nominal exchange rate refers to a rate where the monies of different currencies can be exchanged for one another. So if you go to an international flights or do any international transactions, always refer exchange of currencies between the two or more countries will always be exist, and that ultimately it always refers to a nominal rate or real rate. It depends that in what perspective the currency, or when depends upon the type of the transaction, type of the trade which was exist in different countries. So when we talk about the real exchange rate, refers to a rate where the goods and services produced in different countries and can be exchanged for another. So real exchange rate could, this particular rate would apply when a particular companies, you can say, produce goods and services in different countries, and their currencies can be exchanged for one another, and that the type of the exchange rate that we apply for when any of the firm of any country produces the goods and services to different countries, and the currency could get exchanged, then the real exchange rate will apply in that particular situation. Otherwise, a nominal exchange rate would exist. For example, when we talk about the education, where the students pay the fees, their tuition fees in a another currency, so automatically nominal exchange rate would apply. So whatever the exchange rate of that particular currency will be used. So this is the overview of the exchange rate. Now we talk about the next concept, that is the importance of macroeconomics. The first, it always helps that how the modern economic system would work, and it also described it, that how the economy perform the whole function, how the national income and the employment rate is determined based on the aggregate demand and aggregate supply. The second point is also achieve the goal of the economic growth and also improve the economic performance of the country. So it means based while studying a detailed analysis of the macroeconomic variables, automatically it will also increase the GDP level and the employment. It means, in other words, it also helps to reduce the unemployment rate. So if there is economic growth, then automatically the GDP and the employment would become goes up. So this is a that microeconomic analysis will also helps to determine the economic growth of the country, and with their analysis they will explain that how to reach the maximum level of economic growth and how to sustain it well, and automatically that how to achieve and you can say maintain consistently. The third point is it also brings the stability in the price level and how to analyze the business cycle. That means the economic activities or the business activities as well. And it also helps to prepare a certain remedial measures to control the inflation and deflation or hyperinflation, which is a real phenomena is really would also exist, and this macroeconomics will also helps to prepare some measures so that they can control such situations. It also explains the all those factors which also helps to determine the balance of payment. And of course, it also identify whether the deficit or has been you can say has been occurred in the balance of payment or not. And if it is occurred, so definitely this macroeconomic analysis also suggests the remedial measures that how to convert this deficit into a profit or into a revenue. So that is being done through the macroeconomic analysis only. When we talk about the nation, when we talk about the country, or when we talk about the economy as a whole. Unemployment rate, the youth unemployment rate, it still exists. It refers to a rate that is 45.2% in real. So this is also the one of the economic problem which also need to be resolved, and it to be resolved by the macroeconomic analysis. So it always helps to solve the economic problems like poverty, unemployment, inflation, deflation, where the solution is to be, you can say, prepared at a macro level only. So it means we are not talking about the individual economy, we are talking about the level of a whole economy, the whole Indian economy in talk. It also helps that how the economy is working at a macro level. So if there is any issues economically, so definitely macroeconomics is also helps to formulate such strategies, economic strategies or the policy, and how to coordinate with international economic policies. So that to be done or that to be performed or such functions to be performed through macroeconomics only. economy from the dangers which was being comes from the macroeconomic theories. And of course automatically when we talk about the macroeconomics, we look the scenarios of a whole economy rather than the individual basis. So that is the importance of the macroeconomics. So whatever the economy do is for the nation, is for the country. To if we talk about the economic problems, we talk about the working of the economy, we talk about the balance of payments, always or talk about the country economy, the nation economy, or the whole economy, and that to be resolved through the macroeconomic analysis. So we are not talking about only the one variable, we are talking about the 11 variables where the researches and development has to be worked on, and accordingly the level of decisions on each these parameters is to be taken in a country or in any country, I could say. The next concept, as it's there is an advantages of the macroeconomics, we also call in importance, under the importance, the concept of the importance of macroeconomics. So the another level that the macroeconomics will also have a limitations. So the first limitation is excessive generalization. As of course macroeconomic doesn't deal with individual observation, but still when we talk about making up the inferences or making up the conclusions about the system as a whole, the individual observation was also being distract the goal, and that's the main limitation of the excessive generalizations. So if there is any situation, the individual observation conclusions about the system as a whole. For example, if you talk about any loss incurred by one firm in an industry, it does not necessarily that it always refers to all the losses in all the firms or the other firms in it. No. If we talk about the hospitality shown by one Indian, it does not necessarily imply that every Indian show the same gesture, show the same respect in the hospital to everyone. So that is also the one of the limitation of macroeconomics, where the individual observation or the generalization of individual observation to a system is also create a havoc about the whole system in it. When we talk about the obsession of aggregative approaches, so when we talk about the aggregative approaches is also one of the limitation of macroeconomics, because excessive thinking, if a particular, if you in a situation, if any of thinking excessively, then automatically it will also leads to an erratic influence. And when we talk about individual units or individual concepts, always portrayed an individualistic, you can say traits. What is traits here? We are talking about the qualities, the characteristics of the individuals, and automatically they are not adding two or three more factors into a situation, it doesn't mean that aggregative approach is also the one of the limitation of macroeconomics. The third is aggregate may not be true, may not be true at all when we talking about that any inferences come from the individual units or any inferences comes from the individual units, and considering the aggregative tendencies or aggregative conclusions of a situation may not be always true. For example, if any journal price levels will any rise in the journal price level, it doesn't mean that they will harm all the sections of the society, all the sections of the community in the same manner. Or if any consumer suffer from such situation, that is a rising price level, so it automatically doesn't mean the consumer will get a benefit. Of course, the producers will get the benefits from it. So automatically, so whatever the inferences comes or taken out from the individual units, so considering the aggregative inferences, it may not be true. It could not be matched at all. So automatically, if any situation exists or due to some reasons, and doesn't mean that everybody would get harm from such situation. So automatically the price goes up. So automatically it influences the consumer, but not for producers when it comes to the rise in prices. And of course, the consumers buy the products in case of need. The next one is inconsistency between the overall and individual changes. So, if any of the changes in the price of industrial output or any of the fall in the prices of agriculture products, then automatically it doesn't mean that there would be no changes in the price level of the in the journal price level. So keeping up the stability of the journal price level, always the people believes that there should be a no policy change, or there would be definitely it would harm the customers, or it would be harm the ultimate you can see cultivators interest. So it there is an inconsistency when the overall we any changes at a macro level or any changes in the individual level. So it doesn't mean that it would consist it would seem any consistency between the decisions related to the journal price level or any individual price level. So automatically it always shows inconsistencies. It never be consistent. So if there is any change in the policy change, it doesn't mean that it will harm to the cultivator interest or it couldn't be harmed. So always be an inconsistency between all these changes. The next is problem of measurement of aggregate. So when we talk about the that how to measure the aggregate demand and how such problems, even the higher sessions, is to be given to all those analysts, to all those economists to always learn that how to measure such aggregates of demand and supply, or the aggregates of income of the population, which is a very difficult challenge when we talk about the macro level. So this is also one of the limitation of macroeconomic analysis. So when we talk about the macroeconomic analysis, it is always showing overall a real picture of the economy. It doesn't mean that if it may also appear in a top surface of an ocean, or you can see the hard stones or a few stones in it. So when we talk about ultimate when we talk about the individual basis to analyze, then we talk about the macro analysis study that we actually called for an individual study of any of the issues. But when we talk about as an economy, we always talk about the macroeconomic analysis. So now we talk about the circular flow of income, and in other words, we can also call a circular flow of economic activity. So it's just refers or portray a true picture about a flow of income between the producers and the consumer, and how the income circulate between these perspective, I could say the producers and the consumers. So when we talk about such model, circular flow model, producers we call farms and the consumers we call a household. So when we talk about the circular flow of income at a macro level, because here we talk about the aggregate income, so the names has been changed. We call the producer to firm and consumer to household. So when we talk about it, then there is a circulation of income. So definitely there would be an exchange of goods and services as well. There would be a flow of money in it, and that's exactly called the circular flow of economic activity, as it deals with an exchange of money, the exchange of the currencies, that the transactions of economic or economic activities, or in other words a series of economic transactions would exist. So that if something is happened, then of course we always talk about the concept of circular flow of economic activity, or in other words I could say the circular flow of income. So these are the determinants of the circular flow of economic activity. The first one is household, second one is firm, third one is financial institution who always help the consumers or help the household and firms to offer money, to exchange the currencies, to they help or increase the value of money to both of them. The fourth one is government, and the fifth one is foreign sector. So these are the determinants of the circular flow of income, how the income circulate between household to firm, firm to financial institution, and how the government circulated and relate to foreign sector. So let's begin and study each and every determinant under circular flow of income. So when we talk about the household, what is the exactly the household is? It is called a group of people, a group of person who always shares their level of income, who always requires the goods and wants to satisfy their own personal needs or wants. They always owns all resources, and without that they cannot live or they cannot survive their basic amenities, or refers to a low livelihood. So the all resources refers to land, labor, capital, enterprise, which always talk about the four factors of production. Or in other words, it is also called the factors of productions, where the consumers call refers to these are the all resources. But under household, we call all resources rather than we call the factors of production, because if we factor of production, we talk about the individual units or individual pieces. So here we are talking about economy, the whole economy. So the consumers are turned into a households. And the members of the households have two main functions. They supply different factors of production, and the members of household also work as consumers. So these are the members of the household which have two main functions, that the household supply different factors of production, that is land, labor, capital, and so that will be that will work, that this particular concept will work to understand these particular four models, where the household is one of the major part of it. The members of household also work as consumers. So whoever the members of household who are willing to work, they can also work as consumers in that particular enterprise or companies. Now we talk about the firms. So when we talk about the firms, so it refers to an organization that produces the goods and services for a sale, and one of the main objective is to increase the profit in a particular production process of all those goods and services. And of course, A farm uses all those resources which provided by the household to produce or income. So the two main functions of the firm is, of course, they produce the goods and services and supply them into a market. And the firms, it doesn't mean that the firms only produce. They can also purchase the inputs and raw materials from household to use them in the production process so that a particular product can come into a market so that the household could buy and use all those resources to survive or to satisfy their needs or wants. So that is the function of the farms, that how it works in the circular flow of income and how the income generate by the farm. So it's just by selling all those goods and services to the household, and it uses all those resources which is provided by the household, and that are land, labor, capital, and cost. The next one is government. So when we talk about government, we are not talking about the selling or buying of goods and services. Government, when we talk about the tax or non-tax, we are talking about the law and order. We talk about the judiciary and the defense services. So when we talk, just like the firms and the household, the government also earns income and make expenses. So if they earn income from the households and firms, then ultimately the government can able to make the expenses more and more. So the two major functions of the government is government earn revenue from either tax or non-tax sources, whether it would be talk about the would be through the taxes, it would be through the non-taxes sources like TDS, property tax, any other sale of a property tax, all that. So when we talk about the government provide, of course, the government provides all those government services like public services, maintenance of law and order, defense services, judiciary services, hospitality services, all that services, and of course they also earn the income from all these public services either by through tax or non-tax. So this is all about the concept of the government. If we talk about the government flats or the DDA flats, and of course the people who buy such flats and ultimately what they pay for, they pay taxes, and that taxes is the ultimate source of income for the government. The next one is financial institution. Financial institutions also consist of the banks and non-banks institution or intermediaries who always engaged in buying, in the borrowing and the lending of money. So when we talk about the borrowings, that means the savings from household. The financial institution borrow all those savings which has been done by the household, and automatically that money will also land to the ultimate you can say household or the firms. So whatever the leakage, whatever the particular you can see the crisis that the financial institution could face, and of course always provide an option for the household to save their money. The last concept is foreign sectors. When we talk about the foreign sector, we always talk about the international trade. That means the international economic transactions or the international circulation of income. It refers to two parts, the export and so that is the fifth main component of the circular flow of income. So that's it for today. I can come up to more and more interesting and important topics related to this particular course code in the next